Welcome to Artec. Today I'm going to show you how to program two multi-plus units in parallel using Victron's VE Bus configurator tools. So to program both of these units in parallel, we've got two 24 volt 3000 multi-plus 2s. We are going to program them in parallel, so that's not in split phase, that's not 12240, it's simply adding the outputs together. To do that, we'll need both of them to have a power supply hooked up to them, so we've got both of them hooked up to 24 volt power here on the table. We'll also need a cable to connect them up to an MK3 adapter into the laptop, and then also a secondary RJ45 to connect the units to each other. The very first thing that we want to do is we want to plug in both units into our laptop and actually determine if they have the same firmware on the units. You'll need them both to share the same firmware to configure them in a parallel configuration. This would be the same process for the Multiplus series and the Quattro series. Specifically in parallel would work with the 2x120s as well, which is what we have here today and what we'll show. So first up, let's plug in each unit and turn it on and plug it into our laptop to determine the firmware. So now that we have the primary unit plugged in to the laptop via an MK3 adapter, I'm going to turn the unit on. Once the unit is on, we can see that in this case we have a VE bus error. This is because both of these units were previously configured to be in a parallel configuration, and we undid that for a previous video. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually use VE Quick Configure to set as a standalone unit. We've also released a video on this, and you should definitely watch that if you don't know how to set a multi-plus back to standalone mode. So now that I've reset it to standalone mode from a previous configuration and I've got it plugged into my laptop, I'm going to progress with the programming. So we've got a standard Victron RJ45. We're going to plug that into the secondary unit, into the VE bus port, and then connect into the spare VE bus port on the primary unit. So that's now linking the secondary with the primary, and then the primary up to your laptop. Once we have this plugged in, what we're going to do is open up VE Bus Quick Configure. It's going to go to that welcome page like when we showed you on the video around how to reset to standalone. But instead of selecting reset a multi to standalone, this time we're going to set up a VE Bus system. This is going to take us to the configuration page. In this case, we've got two multi-pluses in parallel, and so we want to select two multis in parallel. After that's selected, we can simply click Next, and then it's going to explain to us how we want to set these connections up. If you want a photo, it's going to show you how to do this. It's basically telling you not to go into an Ethernet switch and to connect everything in a daisy chain sort of configuration. Just like the picture showed, we've got the computer going into the primary and then the primary going into the secondary, and so we're all good there. We can click on Next. And then we want to make sure that our COM port is selected. We're COM port 5, so we don't need to change that. And we can click Next. It's going to ask us to switch all units off. We already have all of those units off, and so we can click Next, where it's going to ask us to switch on the primary unit. Typically, I'll do this one on the left-hand side, and if we're not using a 2x120 configuration, then I'll put L1 as the primary and L2 as the secondary. So I'm going to switch on that primary unit and it should identify. Now that it's identified that primary unit, I'm now going to switch on the secondary and it will identify as well. It's going to tell you that it's sending all of these settings to the system, which is going to remove all of the assistance from the devices. We can click Yes. And once these units turn blue, we know that it's sent those settings appropriately. We can simply click Done. Now that we've initially set up these multi-pluses in a parallel configuration, now we want to set the settings for the system, much like we do in vconfig. However, because we've got a multi-unit system, we don't want to access vconfig through vconfig, but we actually want to access it through VE Bus System Configurator. Here, when you open up VE Bus System Configurator, it's going to present you with a screen like this. You can simply select Quick Start and it should detect the units in the system. We can click OK. It's telling us that it's received both of the units in here, and it's placed them both under AC input 1 and L1 because we're running a parallel configuration, and you can see that this is in single phase. To access the units, we'll simply select on this box, which is going to bring up both units. If you can't identify which unit is which, then you can right click on here and flash LEDs. That's going to simply flash the LEDs on the unit of your choice, and therefore you can identify the unit. To make that go away, simply right click on that box again and deselect flash LEDs. Now that we know that the primary unit is on the left, we can right click again and it's going to say VE configure multi. We're going to select that. That would be the same selection for Quattros. It's then going to bring you into VE configuration 3 via bus system configurator, meaning that it's assigning all of the settings that we're about to set to that primary. Once the target has been found, it'll present you with the same screen as you would find in VE config. Because these units are going into a Lynx BMS Victron Smart Lithium battery system, we're going to follow the same programming as if it was a single unit right up until the last step. So on here, we're going to select on the General tab, make sure that it's overruled by remote if you want that AC input current limit to be controllable on a GX device or a digital multi-control. We're going to then go over to the Charger tab and we're going to select the battery type. So we're going to simply select battery type, and then because we're using Victron Smart Lithiums with a Lynx BMS, we're going to select lithium iron phosphate. A lot of people will see this Victron Smart Lithium battery in conjunction with VE Bus BMS, but they'll only read the first portion of it and select this for Victron Smart Lithiums. If you select this and you don't have a VE Bus BMS, it's going to throw a bus system error. So now that we have lithium iron phosphate selected, we're going to click OK. It's going to tell you all of the parameters that it's going to change for these chargers to correlate to the batteries that we know they're hooking up to, and we can select OK. Because we're not going to add any assistance in this video, we're simply going to go and send the settings like you would in a single unit configuration. However, this time, we're not only going to select which settings we're going to, as in whether it's modified settings or all settings, and we can leave it as modified, but we're also going to select whether they're sent to a single device or to all devices. Because both of these chargers are going into the same battery bank, or more often than not, we want to select all devices, and that's going to program not only your primary, but also your secondary at the same time. We can click OK. It's going to prompt you with this alarm, and you can also click OK. Now that we've sent settings to both units, we can simply exit out of this in the top right-hand corner. This is going to bring you back into the bus system configurator. The last thing that we want to do is go into configure and send the entire configuration. Once your multi-pluses have reset, you know that that configuration has been sent successfully, and you can simply close out of VE Bus System Configurator. Thanks for following along today as I teach you how to program Victron's line of inverter chargers, both the multi-pluses and the Quattros, into a parallel configuration. If you have any questions, please reach out to our staff, and as always, we'll leave all of the applicable links in the description below.